It was a cool spring morning in New York City, and Ivanka Trump sat in a corner office of Trump Tower, sunlight pouring in through the tall windows. She had a vision bigger than anything she had ever dreamed of. After years of working under her father's massive empire, Ivanka wanted to establish a luxury hotel chain that would be her own legacy, Ivanka Lux. It would redefine elegance with properties planned in Paris, Dubai, New York, and Tokyo. She had everything lined up. A business plan crafted with military precision, projections vetted by some of the finest minds in real estate, and a glowing reputation as an executive who could deliver. There was only one thing left: financing. Confident, poised, and impeccably dressed, Ivanka walked into the headquarters of Sterling National Bank, a prestigious Wall Street institution known for backing ambitious ventures. She had an appointment with their senior executives. People who, she assumed, would jump at the chance to be part of the Trump brand's next big thing. The meeting started off well. Handshakes, smiles, offers of coffee. Ivanka made her pitch with the polish of a seasoned pro. She outlined her vision, her projections, her marketing strategy. The executives nodded thoughtfully, some even jotting down notes. But when the meeting ended, the atmosphere grew strangely cold. A few days later, Ivanka received the call she never expected: loan denied. "Your project is ambitious, Ms. Trump," the bank's vice president said politely but firmly, "but in today's market, we must be extremely cautious. There are concerns about volatility in the luxury sector. It's simply too risky." Ivanka was stunned. Sterling National Bank had backed far riskier ventures. She knew this wasn't about risk, it was about politics. Even though Donald Trump was president, he remained a deeply polarizing figure. Some businesses wanted to keep their distance. Ivanka didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply thanked them for their time and moved on. The rejection hurt, but it also lit a fire inside her. With typical Trump tenacity, Ivanka found another way. Private investors, many of them overseas, lined up to fund Ivanka Lux. Within 5 years, it became one of the most successful luxury hotel brands in the world. Her properties won awards, her brand exploded globally, and her personal fortune soared. She never once thought about Sterling National Bank again. At least, not until they came crawling back. 10 years had passed since Sterling National Bank had denied Ivanka Trump's loan application, and the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Donald Trump, after a historic second term as president, had transitioned back into the private sector with more power and influence than ever. His brand was bigger, his reach broader. Meanwhile, Ivanka had evolved into a force of her own, not just a successful businesswoman, but an icon of American luxury and entrepreneurial spirit. On the other side of the spectrum, Sterling National Bank wasn't doing so well. Their troubles had started subtly at first: a few bad real estate bets, a couple of corporate clients defaulting on massive loans, and then the scandal. A whistleblower had exposed a series of shady dealings involving the bank's top executives, secret offshore accounts, and illegal campaign contributions. The media descended like vultures, and public trust evaporated overnight. Clients fled. Stock prices plunged. Regulatory agencies launched investigations that crippled daily operations. Within months, Sterling National Bank was on the verge of collapse. Desperate to stay afloat, the board of directors started looking for a miracle, a powerful ally, an injection of confidence, a branding coup that could restore their shattered image. That's when someone floated the unthinkable idea. What if we approached President Trump, or his daughter Ivanka? The room fell silent. It was a risky move. Publicly, many at the bank had distanced themselves from the Trumps during his presidency. But privately, they knew Trump's influence over markets, investors, and the public was undeniable. An endorsement or even a partnership with Trump Enterprises could mean survival. And so, swallowing every ounce of their pride, they drafted a proposal. Their plan? Offer Ivanka Trump a seat on their board of directors, a generous equity stake, and complete creative freedom to redesign Sterling National Bank's brand image, luxury, power, resilience. Everything Ivanka embodied. They even prepared a formal apology behind closed doors. Mistakes were made. "We didn't recognize your brilliance at the time. We humbly seek your partnership." A private jet was chartered to Palm Beach, Florida, where Ivanka was attending a charity gala at Mar-a-Lago. Sterling National's surviving CEO, Richard Mason, once a man too proud to even return Ivanka's calls, now found himself nervously sitting in the Mar-a-Lago lounge, rehearsing his apology, sweating bullets under his expensive Italian suit. When Ivanka finally entered the room, it was like a scene from a movie. Poised, elegant, commanding. The very woman they had underestimated a decade ago. Richard stood up awkwardly, extending his hand. Ivanka shook it politely but coolly, her poker face revealing nothing. "Miss Trump," he began, clearing his throat. "Thank you for seeing us. That is to say, the board would like to formally express our regret for the way we handled your business proposal years ago." Ivanka listened, arms folded, not saying a word. Her silence was unnerving. Richard stumbled through the rest of his speech, detailing the offer, practically begging for her help. When he finished, there was a long pause. Finally, Ivanka smiled, but it wasn't the warm, gracious smile of old. It was the smile of someone who knew the world had finally come full circle. "I'll think about it," she said smoothly. "But understand, if I get involved, it won't be a partnership. It will be a rescue mission. And I'll be the one calling the shots." Richard nodded hastily, willing to agree to anything. But deep inside, Ivanka was already making up her mind. She didn't just want to help Sterling National Bank survive. She wanted to own it. Ivanka Trump left the meeting at Mar-a-Lago with a calm expression, but inside, a storm was brewing, a storm of ambition, strategy, and quiet satisfaction. Sterling National Bank, the same institution that had once dismissed her, was now gasping for air, and she held the oxygen tank. Over the next few days, she didn't rush her decision. No, Ivanka made them wait. She instructed her team of lawyers, financial experts, and branding consultants to dig deep into Sterling's numbers. She wanted to know everything: their debts, hidden liabilities, skeletons in the closet. And what they uncovered was worse than she expected. The bank was not just in trouble. It was toxic. Public trust was shattered, and there were whispers of even more scandals brewing beneath the surface. Most investors would have run for the hills. But not Ivanka Trump. She saw an opportunity others would miss, the chance to build her own financial empire from the ashes of a fallen giant. Days later, she called for a second meeting, but this time on her terms, at Ivanka Lux's headquarters in Manhattan under the towering golden emblem of her hotel brand. Richard Mason and 2 board members arrived, visibly nervous, knowing their fate hung on the whims of the woman they once snubbed. Ivanka welcomed them with cool professionalism and slid a document across the marble conference table. It was a bombshell. "This is my offer," she said crisply. Richard picked up the document and scanned it, his face draining of color. Ivanka wasn't just asking for a seat on the board. She demanded majority ownership, 55% control, at a fraction of the bank's original value. She wanted authority to fire and hire executives without consulting the board. She wanted full branding rights. Ivanka Financial would replace Sterling National Bank within 6 months. And most brutally of all, she wanted public acknowledgement, a press conference where the bank would apologize for past misjudgments and praise Ivanka's visionary leadership. Richard looked up, mouth dry. This is a hostile takeover," he croaked. Ivanka leaned back in her chair, her eyes gleaming with that trademark Trump steel. "Call it what you want," she said. "But you don't have a choice. Without me, Sterling is dead by Christmas." The room went silent. They knew she was right. Swallowing their pride, the board members signed the preliminary agreement that day. Sterling National Bank was officially entering its final chapter, under Ivanka Trump's iron grip. Within hours of the deal's leak, headlines exploded. Ivanka Trump to take over collapsing Sterling National Bank. Sterling saved by Trump heiress in shocking financial coup. Ivanka Financial. The next empire? Reporters camped outside Ivanka Lux, desperate for a comment. Financial analysts debated on cable news whether this was brilliance or insanity. Public reaction was a mixed cocktail. Admiration from Trump loyalists, rage from anti-Trump circles, but overall, fascination. The same executives who once sneered at Ivanka were now groveling at her feet. And America was watching. She scheduled the public rebranding event at her father's iconic property, the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C., ensuring maximum media exposure. On the big day, Ivanka walked onto the stage, flashing her dazzling, unshakable smile. Behind her, the Sterling National Bank logo was being physically torn down, replaced live in front of cameras with gleaming letters. Ivanka Financial. She stepped up to the podium, cameras flashing, the world hanging on her every word. "Sometimes," she said, her voice smooth and confident, "a door closes not to keep you out, but to prepare you for building a kingdom of your own." Thunderous applause filled the room. America had just witnessed a financial comeback for the ages. After the explosive rebranding of Sterling National Bank into Ivanka Financial, the business world couldn't stop buzzing. Stock prices, once plummeting into the abyss, began to rise sharply. Investors who had once pulled out in panic now scrambled to get a piece of the new empire. Deposits flooded in. Big-name corporate clients signed up eagerly, hoping to be associated with the new face of modern finance, Ivanka Trump. Within 6 months, Ivanka Financial was not only stable, it was thriving. She moved swiftly and ruthlessly behind the scenes. Top executives from the old Sterling days were fired without ceremony. Entire departments were overhauled. She introduced cutting-edge digital banking technologies, luxury concierge banking for the wealthy elite, and aggressive new lending programs aimed at entrepreneurs, the very people she had once been a part of. And it worked like magic. Financial magazines that had previously snubbed her now plastered her on their covers with headlines like, Ivanka Trump, the Queen of American Banking. From rejection to revolution, how Ivanka Financial is changing the game. Meanwhile, Richard Mason, the former CEO who had so smugly denied her, was now broke, blacklisted, and humiliated. His name was a cautionary tale in the industry. Don't underestimate the underdog. One evening, as Ivanka sipped champagne on the rooftop terrace of her Manhattan penthouse, she received a message that made her smile, a subtle, almost ironic twist of fate. Richard Mason was trying to schedule a meeting. Not with the board. Not with some junior executive. With Ivanka herself. Curious, she agreed to meet him the next morning at Ivanka Financial's glittering new headquarters. Richard arrived looking like a ghost of his former self, thinner, grayer, defeated. He wore a cheap suit that hung loosely off his frame. As he entered Ivanka's office, now decorated with bold, modern art and commanding views of Central Park, he realized just how far the tables had turned. Ms. Trump, he said hoarsely. I need help. Ivanka remained seated behind her massive glass desk, coolly flipping through a file. Help? She repeated, not bothering to hide the amusement in her voice. My reputation is ruined, Richard stammered. I'm unemployable. No one will touch me. I was wondering if, perhaps, you could find me a position here. Anything. Even advisory work. The room seemed to freeze. For a long moment, Ivanka just looked at him. The man who once treated her dreams like a nuisance. Finally, she stood up and walked around the desk, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. You once told me I wasn't ready for big deals, she said, her voice soft but cutting. You said my ideas were too ambitious, too risky. Richard swallowed hard, looking down at his hands. And now, Ivanka continued, you're asking me to clean up your mess? He nodded miserably. Ivanka smiled a dazzling, ruthless smile. I'm afraid, she said sweetly, Ivanka Financial only hires the best and brightest. You, Mr. Mason, no longer qualify. She turned on her heel and walked away, her security detail politely escorting Richard out of the building. For the second time in his life, Richard Mason had underestimated Ivanka Trump. And for the second time, he paid the price. This time, there would be no second chances. As Ivanka's empire soared, whispers began echoing through Washington, D.C. Talk of political ambitions. Talk of another Trump returning to the White House. Talk of Ivanka 2032. The idea, once considered laughable by elites, now seemed frighteningly plausible. And behind the scenes, her father, Donald Trump, the reigning force of American politics, watched with pride. You see, sweetheart, he said during one of their private dinners, raising a glass of wine, they tried to shut you out and you bought the whole damn building. Ivanka laughed. A rich, genuine laugh. She had come for a loan. They had denied her. And in the end, she had taken everything. The years that followed saw Ivanka Financial grow into a colossus. It wasn't just a bank anymore, it was a lifestyle brand, a symbol of elite success, a badge of ambition. Ivanka launched specialized divisions for tech startups, women entrepreneurs, veterans, and green energy innovators. She hosted glamorous conferences, rubbing shoulders with tech titans, celebrities, and world leaders. By the time the 10th anniversary of her takeover rolled around, Ivanka Financial was a $300 billion powerhouse with branches not only across the United States, but in London, Dubai, Singapore, and Sao Paulo. Her success had become the stuff of legend, studied in business schools, hailed by financial analysts, and dissected by political commentators. In one unforgettable magazine profile, a former Sterling board member summed it up best. Ivanka Trump wasn't looking for approval. She was looking for ownership. And she got it, all of it. Meanwhile, the sterling name, once a fixture of old money banking, was nothing more than a footnote in history books. In 2032, when Ivanka announced her candidacy for President of the United States, America wasn't surprised. In fact, polls showed her leading from day one. She wasn't just Donald Trump's daughter anymore. She was Ivanka Trump, the self-made titan who had turned rejection into dominance, who had proven herself in the brutal arenas of business and public life. The media scrambled to cover her every move. The banker queen heads to Washington. Ivanka Trump, America's next power broker? From boardroom to Oval Office? Campaign rallies were packed with young voters, business owners, and suburban families who saw in Ivanka a blend of old-school toughness and new-age vision. In her speeches, she didn't rant. She didn't insult. She inspired. She spoke about resilience, about the American dream, about the power of never giving up even when the whole world slams the door in your face. At one packed rally in Orlando, she famously said, "10 years ago, a bank told me I wasn't good enough. 10 years later, I bought them out. That's the American spirit. That's what we're going to bring back to our country." The crowd roared with thunderous applause, chanting, "Ivanka! Ivanka! Ivanka!" under the blazing sun. In a poetic turn of fate, during her campaign tour in New York, Ivanka passed the old Sterling Bank building, now one of her flagship Ivanka Financial headquarters. She paused for a moment outside, surrounded by security and media. For a second, it was just her and the gleaming gold-lettered logo above the entrance. She remembered her younger self, walking nervously into Sterling's headquarters a decade earlier, full of hope, only to be turned away by a sneering executive. She smiled. Not out of bitterness, not even out of revenge, but out of the quiet, powerful knowledge that rejection hadn't destroyed her. It had forged her. As cameras clicked around her, Ivanka turned back to her staff, her family, and the massive crowd gathering behind barricades. "Let's keep moving," she said with a grin. "We've got a country to rebuild." And with that, Ivanka Trump, once dismissed as an overreaching dreamer, walked boldly toward her next conquest, the White House, because in the world of Ivanka Trump, a no was never the end. It was always just the beginning.